results. I'm following straight on from 11 where I just shown you how we'd over here we'd built a simple room. Then we'd sort of done our what's called our ray tracing calculation, but we'd calculated how much light is falling on every single one of these points for every single hour of the entire year. And if you doubt me, take a look inside these files here. I'm not going to look at them again. Check the previous tutorials if you're curious. Right, and what we've done is then we sort of pre-process these results, and is it? No, it's not still open. And what we've got here, in fact, I'm not even going to bother with lead. And what we have here is a far more manageable packet of data. Yeah. And it is this data now that we are going to, sorry, I'm just going to save that in case it crashes, that we're going to feed into the final stage here, which is display results. So we just sort of, we went for the Radiance core of, we prepped our file, we displayed our model, we identified a surface to attach our calculation points, we then made the initial calculation, we then formatted our results to how they perform against the BREEAM standards, and now finally we want to take a look at our results. And I've got two nodes for you here. One is look at your results graphically, yeah, so you can actually see them in Dynamo, and the other one is write me an Excel file that I can put in the project folder, or some put it in the project folder, or give it to my client, or it's like an auditable file. This is temporary. The minute you shut Dynamo down, it's gone, unless you want to do a screen grab or something like that. So so you need to plug a few things in here, but again, it's with I say with practice, although I even forget. But so material specs, Dynamo model, grid spec. How can one have come after? Oh, did I move that? Grid. Where's? How can I run a calc without a grid? Dynamo model. It's there because I can. No, I don't know. Okay. It's been a really long afternoon. You have to bear with me. Okay. Grid spec. Yeah. Okay. And over here, and we've got run the node. These run the nodes are here, and they're set to false because sometimes these can take a long time. So, and what I made it for is, you can set it all up, you can bind it all together, and then, but what you don't want is it sort of like firing off all the time. And every time you change anything sort of downriver, as it were, as in before, the nodes that feed into this, if you was to change that or that or that, you'll keep refiring everything. So, if you set this to just false, Boolean false, what you're going to get is it's just going to say it's not going to try and run it. It is running it, but it's just sort of it goes in and gets kicked back out, kicked back out, kicked back out. It's computationally it's very cheap, so it's not going to give you a problem. We've got a few other ones here, but let's what was that? But let's just run that, and let's just get some results, so we've got something to talk about. So when you run that, a second one appears over here, and it's a bad example because everything passes, so everything's great. Let's see how it performs against daylight factor. I'm just trying to get some, yeah, there we go, we've got some failure points. Okay, yeah, that's a nice example, isn't it? Okay, so what we got here is these are the daylight factor results. Daylight factor is a percent. It's a percent. What's happening at this point expressed as a percentage of what's happening outside. So the average target that we're trying to get to is 3%. Yeah. So if it's like if it's there, it's nice and green, and as it fails it starts to get darker in color. I've also set it up so like daylight factor is usually if you get past your target, that's a good thing, but say like if you're getting a daylight factor of like 10 or 15, it is not time for high fives. You've got far too much daylight in your room, so I've set it up so it does penalize you for that as well. Although Briam doesn't care. So up here is it's pass or fail. Your target was on each for a point. Your target was 3%. Did you get 3%? There's no graduated color. It's like it's either yes or no. That's useful when you're sort of just trying to work out your failure points. So the specification is you need 3% compliance on average, an average of 3%, and you need a uniformity of zero point 0.3. And in summary, you're getting an average of 0.24, 2.4% with a uniformity of almost 3. I personally, I would let that go, but that is a failure. So so your answer is black and white there, isn't it? That this room does not pass it on that criteria. We did see, however, Briam says you can pass on that, or you can pass on these two, and this is not a this is not a discussion on Briam. I must remember that. Let's look at some other. Okay, I can feed across. So we've got different values and we're kind of jumping across, and it's not ideal, is it? So if you use the native function list create, we used it on previous tutorials. Just plug the whole lot in. You can plug it. You can mix. You can do anything. Literally mix lead with Briam. Not that you'd want to, but you can put them all together and just stick them in, and it will just basically it will just keep laying everything out for you. You have to be careful with this node, and I think it's just given us a good example of that this is Dynamo really struggles with this node. I'm telling you, it's not my code. Yeah, see that? Didn't do anything different. I just turned it on and turned it off, and it worked. And now we've got everything together, and I'll also show you why one of the reasons Dynamo struggles. But so now we've got the sort of annual average illuminance, the minimum illuminance, and the daylight factor. So it's all exactly the same again. This is your target. It doesn't care how high you go. But you need 2000. Basically, it's saying you need 2000. Every point needs to achieve 300 lux at 2000 hours, and 80% of the space needs to do that. Climate-based metrics can be a little bit of you need to sort of take a moment to digest it. So, and this is saying how many hours does each point achieve 300 lux? And admittedly, I haven't sort of written that. I sort of haven't written that out. But how many hours at this point does it achieve 300 lux? Doesn't care about. It's not even asking the question of occupancy time. Okay, and it's similar with that, and it's similar with that. But the point here is, you can just put in as many as you like, but bear this in mind, right? Dynamo does not. Can you see how the text is just like really weird and ugly? Like like if you're using other packages, they will give you like a proper font-based text, yeah, and it's quite lightweight for your computer to work with. What Autodesk has burdened us with is when Dynamo writes text, it's literally writing like. Can you see how every single bit of the text is a line, and the cost of that is. Can you see how there's so many lines here? Is computationally for a graphics display there's as much weight in that number there as there'll be like there's probably like almost the same amount in that number as in that entire model there. And how many numbers have we got? So imagine like if your grid is coarser and you put more outputs, sooner or later just and couple that with the fact that Dynamo doesn't have a very good graphics engine. That's why like it all looks like a bit like can you see how how jaggedy all the text is and everything like that? It's like do you remember like Super Nintendos from the 90s or something? You just put all that together and Dynamo gets it gets very distressed with the weight that node puts it through. But that's how you use that node. And then there are a few other functions here. So you could say, actually, and I am going to just make it a bit easier. Right, and you could say, show me the model outline. I don't think you need this, but if you want it, it's there. So and again, imagine you had all your boxes, it will do everything. If you wanted your obstructions, you remember in other models where we had all those Revit obstructions, it'll stick all that in for you. You've got the pass fail thing there. If you don't want it, you could turn it off. I don't know if you saw before, it was displaying the glazing for you. I think that's very useful just so you can do a common sense check and say, well, here's my glazing. I should have more light by the glazing. If you don't like it, you can turn that off. But as I've said before, with all these kind of nodes, I would say just leave them as they are and let them manage themselves. And the very final one here is write into Excel. So we've got that there. You could do a screen grab if you want, or maybe if you want to put it into like a presentation. It's not totally pretty, is it? But you could do that, but you can't give this to a client really. So what you've got here is pretty much the same thing, results files. The only different one is the calculation parameters. And again, because it's for client submittal, we want a record of what did we calculate, what did we base our calculations on. Otherwise, the calculations have no value. So as with the material specifications as well, it's pretty much a calculation parameter, really, isn't it? Grid spec, and so you got the show all outputs node. I showed you that on a previous tutorial. It just sort of flushes out what you put in just to check everything. If you want to do a check, you don't have to open Excel, but I would say logically, if you were writing an Excel file, you'd probably want to check it does actually yeah, you'd probably want to open it just to say that it did actually write. You can overwrite the file. I forget how that works now, actually. I think it's because if you've got the file open, it will not try to overwrite it, and it will make a fresh file, and it will append another. It'll append like a one to the end of the file address to make a fresh one. So you're not in a situation where you're sort of stomping all over your old files. And let me just go, before I show you that, let's just get to the end of all those options. And Excel comments. In fact, I'll show that in a moment. So what you've got here is exactly the same information you saw on the Dynamo display. There's a few extra bits here. This is, as I say, this is what validates the file. So if we need to prove that we showed, we did give you a valid calculation, there's enough information there to show it, other than the geometry, of course. And then we're saying, so Briam illuminance. Should I show these side by side maybe? I'm sure you trust me, but Briam, okay, Briam illuminance. Oh, it's going to do that, isn't it? Wait a minute. Come on. Right, you go over there. You come over here. Yes, right. So 2114, 2114, 2353, and so forth. So you've literally got the information here is now here. If you had if you'd rotated that, do you know what I mean? If you have non-square shapes, it'll cope with that all the same. Yep, and you've still got the same. So this is what you're aiming for. So the minimum illuminance Briam are asking for is 2,000 hours at least 90 lux. We have 3,300 hours at least 90 lux, and so forth. And like I say, it does ask for daylight factor as well. I think we failed on the daylight factor, but I believe you can check here. Can't. Oh no, because I unplugged it all, didn't we? We failed on the daylight factor. We passed on that, and we passed on that, so we're good. So gives you the choice. You can go daylight factor route or climate based route. We passed here. Very last thing I said I'd show you is a comment. So you can go to string. You can put in lists of data, and actually I'll show you that because it's, well, behind the scenes it's clever anyway. So you might say I don't know, this is a classroom, okay, and I might write then like another note that says this is a template design. Template design. Whew. Tired after all these tutorials. Go to that list command. Do you notice how you only need a tiny amount of like native Dynamo stuff as well, don't you, to make all this work? And well, and just to, and you can even make nested lists. Nested lists are lists within lists within lists. It'll just basically stick it in there and it'll just squash it all down to, yeah. So flatten a nested list. To be honest, it was just more technical exercise that I did it. So, and Dynamo's crashed again. You see that? Look. So I need to save it. You just take my word for it. Plug that in, and basically up here in the comments section, all that writing will appear up here. It's not my fault that, like, yeah, Dynamo just crashed while I was doing that. Okay, that's the end of the tutorials. Wow, that was a long stint. I will get these uploaded now. Thank you for your time. Bye bye.